quality customer service. So we try to do that quality customer service part as best we can, but as Charlie talked about, we have pretty limited staff. With those 3 office folks that Charlie talked about, that only leaves about a dozen folks that are out there actually maintaining our parks. And this is a huge system of 68 parks. So we need to think about ways that we can do things differently, where we can possibly change our funding situation and try to launch in a different direction with this master plan. So that talks about those partnerships and stewardship pieces. So with this master plan, as you can imagine, since we've been working on this for 12 plus years, and with a task force of 23 people, there have been a lot of great ideas that have been developed over time, which have evolved into these strategies that are in the plan. And I'll highlight some of these as we go through, and Charlie will take some of them as well. But we would like to point you back to this plan to read through all of them. We don't have the time to go through all 70 plus of them tonight. We want to hit some of the highlights. So the way, with all these strategies, to try to find some structure and format to this, we put them into these different buckets for our goals. So collaborate, connect, create vibrancy, generate economic vitality, protect resources, and reflect our values. So I'll go through the first 3 of those, and then I'll pass it back to Charlie, and we'll go back and forth. So goal 1, collaborate. Engage residents, volunteers, interest groups, educational providers, businesses, and local, state, and federal agencies as partners in the coordinated effort to expand, enhance, interpret, provide, and protect parks, natural areas, trails, and recreation opportunities across Lane County. So there's a whole lot there, but the point of that is that we want to be collaborating with these different groups, with our users, trying to come up with the best way to meet people's needs and expand and stretch our limited resources. So the major strategies, just the highlights that I'll bring out tonight under the collaborate bucket is, 1, we'd like to hire a volunteer coordinator, and need to figure out a way to get that resourced. We use a lot of volunteers in our parks. Friends of Buford Park is one great example, where there are probably thousands of people out there over the course of the year that contribute probably hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work to be able to expand what we do out there, building trails, controlling vegetation. And we'd like to be able to do that more and at more of our parks, but it takes somebody to manage that, to make sure that when people come out and volunteer in our parks that they're being used effectively, that they're being appreciated and thanked and communicated with. So we'd like to have somebody to be able to coordinate that effort across our structure. The second one there, to develop and implement engagement and communication plans. So right now we kind of throw stuff up on our website and hope that people will read it, but it's, there could be a lot of improvement with that. But we don't really have a coordinated effort, mailing lists, where we're regularly communicating in newsletters or anything to let people know what's happening in our parks. So coming up with a way to have some ongoing proactive communications with our users. 3, engage local businesses. Just knowing, as we're looking for other ways to fund this system, businesses could be a key part. They could be sponsors for particular activities or buildings that we want to do. So trying to find different ways to do that. The 4th bullet there, create a 501c3 umbrella friends group. So 501c3 is a nonprofit status. Some of our friends groups have that. I'm not sure if maybe all of them. I think we have 4 functioning friends groups at this point, but it's hard for a small group of volunteers to get that status and maintain it. And if a new group is starting, that's a significant hurdle. So if we could create an umbrella nonprofit status for all those groups, that could be a significant benefit to try to support them and their efforts. And then the last one, develop internship policies. We have great opportunities for internships with University of Oregon here. The county is doing this as a broader effort to try to get students involved. It's a win-win where they get experience, we get some great work at a pretty low wage, and we've already started down this path. Charlie got 3 great internship projects going in the last semester, I guess it was, and they gave us some really quality work, and I'll talk about that a little more as we go through. Goal 2, connect. Attract people to nature, the outdoors, and county parks by providing a variety of experiences, improving park and facility access, increasing stewardship,
supporting environmental education, nature interpretation, and improving communication. So similar to Collaborate, but just how we're connecting people to our parks and within our parks, and I'll take you through some of the strategies here. So the first one there, wayfinding. So wayfinding is just a fancy word for signage within the park so that people can get to where they want to go. There's a lot we could do on that, and improving our access signage. One of those internship projects that we had somebody look at, I'm not too sure if that was supposed to be the focus, but she brought us some great information. Took a picture of one of our major signs at Mount Pisgah and showed us all the things that were out of date and how it could be better organized, and some great suggestions that we need to take advantage of and move on to be able to communicate better with users of the park, particularly people that aren't familiar with it. Coordinate with other agencies, just acknowledging that we need to build those partnerships and strengthen them, whether it's state parks or the Marine Board or whatever other agencies are out there, to try to leverage funds, go in for grant money to be able to capitalize on that resource and leverage there. ADA friendly, so American Disabilities Act, making sure that we have accessible parks. We don't have a lot of features out there for our folks in wheelchairs or whatever the disability is. And that's a large and growing segment of our population, and we should be doing more to make sure that we have accessible parks. User-friendly webpage, talked about our webpage a little bit. The county has done a lift on our broad platform for our website, so there's things that we can do to make it more user-friendly, mobile-friendly for folks on cell phones, and just better content, making sure that we're keeping that updated. Social media campaign, acknowledging that people get their news from a lot of different sources now, and that's a major one, particularly for our younger user group, and trying to do more there to communicate through social media and make people aware of the different things we have going on in our parks. And then finally, online self-guided activities, just acknowledging people always have their phones anymore, and trying to get information there so that people can experience our parks in a new way, and have information through the historical features or more information about the natural features in the parks, so that people can learn on their own without having a tour guide bringing them through. Goal 3, create vibrancy. Reinvigorate and revitalize key parks as thriving, family-friendly outdoor activity hubs through redesign, renovation, and programming to help position Lane County as the best county for outdoor recreation and play. So recognizing that we can't just have our parks there stagnant without thinking about new features and trying to invest and respond to different needs as those change through time. So strategies here. One thing just to acknowledge is that we can't be everything to everyone. We need to figure out where we want to focus our dollars and try to do that strategically. So we hit the things that people want the most, or where the most users are, and that we're targeting our investments. And the second one there, create master plans for targeted sites. That's to acknowledge that this is a high-level plan. We're not into the weeds of specific. There's some recommendations for specific parks in the plan, which you'll see, but it's not at a fine level of detail. And that level of detail really needs to be in a separate plan for specific parks. So we have a master plan for the Howard Buford Recreation Area, Mount Pisgah. That needs to be updated. We just recently developed a habitat management plan for that, which will be going to the board soon. But there's a need for this at some of our other, perhaps Zumwalt, some of our other large and active parks. So going through that process separately. The third one, recruit program providers or host regular activities, events, and programs. So would love to have more programming in our parks. We're parks, and we're not really parks and rec. We don't have a lot of programs going on out there. There are some through our friends groups and some through our hosts, but it's not a huge focus right now of the Lane County parks, but we'd like to support that effort. So Friends of Buford Park, they put on a lot of activities out there for their user, just for the general user and the members of their organization. There's a person out on the coast that has started a friends group for Harbor Vista and has doing new programming for kids, and we'd love to support that effort and expand that across our parks. And then the last one there, connect with niche recreation enthusiasts. So this is just recognizing that people have specialized interests, and trying to create energy around that. So whether it's disc golf or geocaching or some of the more modern new things that people are doing in our parks, and trying to get those going and entice people to use our parks in different ways. Charlie.
So go forward, this is one of the ones that I touched on earlier, was generate economic vitality. And this really is balancing the needs of the community with having the opportunities that we have as a park as an open space, something that we can use, something that we can offer up to the community and work with the community to attract events, to attract tourism, to attract events. How can we help many of these smaller communities so that our parks are a resource for them and they provide an economic resource? Some of these, with the Friends of Zumwalt, we have 4 parks that we lease from the Army Corps of Engineers around Fern Ridge, with Zumwalt being one of them, Perkins Peninsula being one of them. How can we use these parks to help the citizens and community of Bonita? Some of that might be, that we have a disc golf course out there. Some of that might be, which we're doing this year. We have Oregon Paddle Sports that are renting canoes and stand-up boards and offering tours and lessons on canoeing in the Fern Ridge Reservoir. Those are things that we want. Those are things that we can advertise. Those are things that the city can advertise to attract more people and to offer opportunities for the community and the residents. With this, one of our key partners in doing anything along these lines is going to be working with Travel Lane County, working with the tourism industry. How can we do this? How can we help? Travel Lane County, they have got staff that contacts and works with promoters. They contact us, work with us to figure out what venues and what opportunities we have. Any opportunities that we provide, it's got to be within the confines and the purpose of the park and what works with that community. Develop additional resources and funding. As we go through again, we need to work on how we're going to resource our parks, how we're going to fund our parks, and how we're going to be able to contribute that to the community. Any money, any revenue that we generate, we put right back into the park system. As the Parks Division, we don't get any property tax revenue. 1/3 of our revenue comes from the fees that we raise from camping, from parking fees, from annual passes, from shelter reservations. All the money and revenue that we generate, we get to put back in the park system. The more revenue we generate, the more we can do in our parks, the more we can upgrade many of our facilities and our projects and our capital infrastructure. Reevaluate and update our fees and fee structure. That's actually something we're doing right now. We're in the final stages of finalizing a contract to have a market fee analysis study done. It's been since 2013 since we've raised our fees, and we want to see where are we at in the market, where are we at compared to all the other recreation providers in the area, and will that provide us any opportunities? Enhance and expand camping options. Our camping program with our 5 campgrounds and then with Camp Lane, camping, there is a huge demand for it. Our camping, the occupancy rate, how many people are camping per night, is rising a lot. Over the last few years, it's increased significantly, and it looks like it's going to continue to increase significantly. There's a demand out there, and we want to meet that demand. And again, that's a different demand than what other people want out on the water, out fishing, but we want to try and provide those opportunities for people. And continuing to apply large events process sites. A few years back, we had the large events task force meet. They came up with some recommendations, and now we have the large events oversight group as a result of that. And we're going to continue to work with that process. And again, that's balancing the needs and demands of promoters and with the communities and with the residents. We're going to balance and look at all those options. Goal number 5 is sustain and protect our assets. With 68 parks, we've got a lot of structures, we have a lot of infrastructure, and a lot of that infrastructure is degraded, is old. Many of the parks that we lease from the Corps, a lot of those things, the infrastructure was put in back in the 60s and 70s. It needs to be replaced, and it's breaking. We have a number of pumps in our system that haven't been serviced for 20 or 30 years, and we're starting to work through that program to do that. We have all these assets, and we need to protect them, because that helps us keep the parks open, helps keep them safe, and helps keep them attractive for all the purposes that we want. Looking at this, what we just talked about was increased investment and maintenance. Again, looking at all the infrastructure we have, all the machines that we have, making sure they're maintained, making sure that they're operating efficiently. And part of this is looking at what our resource inventory is. We have 68 parks. Since I've been here for the last 2 years, some parks have come, some parks are going. There's some more on the table that might come and go. And we need to know, what do we have? What are the resources? Really, what are we looking at? You know, part of this, a key part of this whole master plan is for us as an organization to look at and make strategic decisions that have a purpose and that are gonna get us somewhere and that they're gonna advance us further down the road. And understanding what we have is a key part of that. And again, that same concept goes to the deferred maintenance projects that we have out there. The last number that I heard was 17 million in deferred maintenance. That was from a few years ago. Dan Hurley and I have talked, and that's one of the things that we want to do is go out and get a new study done to understand really how much deferred maintenance do we have? What do we need to do? Because after we understand that, understand where we're at, then we can start making some better strategic decisions. And conducting a trails inventory, again, understanding what our system has. What do we have? We know we have 28 miles of trails out at Howard Buford Recreation Area. Not sure how many miles of trails we have out through the rest of the system. It would be good to know. A key part of this, and what's come out of our master plan task force, trails, developing trails, both trails within a park for people to enjoy, but also our parks as trail hubs. So bicycle trails for people that want to travel through two different parts. You know, if we had, for up this region, if we had trails that acted as hubs and stopping points for bicycle races, for bicyclists. We have a number of bicycling events and groups that come to and out of Armitage Park. They stay there overnight, they start, they go out on their road race or their road ride the next day, and they come back and spend the night again. Those are positive events. Those are things that we want to encourage and support. And then again, supporting environmental education. With outdoor school coming back, you know, we have a number of parks that would be prime opportunities to bring children, to bring schools out into nature, to learn about the habitat, to learn about the value of natural resource, and to get them involved in the outdoors. We want to provide that opportunity, work with schools and school districts and other educational organizations to make that happen. And then our final goal, goal 6, is to reflect our values. And this is to emphasize our diverse and natural character, again, making strategic decisions to maintain what we have, to make it attractive. We want people to drive by a park and go, that's a beautiful spot, I want to go there. We want them to go there and have a wonderful experience, and we want them to come back to that park. We want them to find and go to other Lane County parks, and again, to enjoy this experience, to enjoy these public resources that the communities have, and to be a benefit to the public and all the communities around them. And to do this, you know, part of what we need to do to work with Travel Lane County and to bring all people into our parks is to have a brand and to market Lane County parks. What are we? What are we providing? And to narrow that focus and go out there and brand and market ourselves. You know, at the events that I've been at recently at the county fair this year and last year, a lot of people don't know what a Lane County park is. They go to parks. They might know if it's their special park or if they have to buy a pass to get there. But many people don't know what parks are Lane County parks versus Willamette Lane versus Eugene or State or BLM. They don't know. We need to let them know that this is a Lane County park. Come invest with us. You know, pay your fees, your annual passes, invest time, be a volunteer, support the park and the park system. And developing, again, a long-term asset replacement plan. It gets back to our investments, knowing what structures and infrastructure we have and developing a plan to keep that replaced. Evaluating functionally closed parks. Functionally closed parks are parks that we don't invest any money or time in and that we don't generate any revenue from. Fortunately, over the last few years, we've reduced the number of functionally closed parks off our system, but we still have a couple of them. Peaceful Valley that I mentioned earlier is one of them. And if we can get these off our system or not classify them as functionally closed because they're being used by the public, that's a good thing. That's what we want. We have this property, we have this land available. Let's get people out there to use it and enjoy it. And then also considering long-term funding prior to acquiring new sites. You know, 68 sites all across the county with the limited staffing. We don't need more sites, but if somebody comes to us and says, here is a site, can you do something with it? If we can do something to it that benefits the community and that we can generate enough revenue that we can support hiring more people to take care of it and improve it, that's a good thing. If it's going to be a drain on our staffing because we can't hire anybody else to do it, to maintain it, and to put it in the condition that we hoped it would be in, that doesn't do anything else but waters down the system. And we're not able to strategically put forth either our resources, either funding or personnel to do anything with it. We're not going to take that on. We don't want to take those on. So The master plan also goes through a couple site recommendations. If you remember, the last master plan, really detailed. This one is not as detailed. There are some site recommendations, and there are a couple for parks up here in the McKenzie River area that I wanted to touch on. One of them is Howard J. Morton. You know, as we go through and we look at this, some of this, it's getting back to what we talked about with signage and wayfinding. It's just add park identification signage, so people know where they go. They know it's a public park. They can go and they can enjoy that. And then also at this one, evaluate options to improve the entrance. Again, making it useful, making it friendly, making it attractive to people, so it's going to some purpose. And the second one is, you know, and Ken's very well aware of this one, it's the old McKenzie Fish Hatchery and turning that into an interpretive museum center. And that is something that we really support. You know, as you think about that project and what it does, that is a prime example of what this master plan supports. It supports, you know, helping a volunteer friends group. It supports, you know, the natural area, the historic part of this region, and it supports economic vitality. Everything that we talked about with the collaboration and all 6 goals really fall into that project, and we're really supportive of that project. And those are the types of projects that we want to see go forward and provide any support and assistance we can to ensure that they come to fruition. So with that, I think we're talking about the adoption and the timeline, and I'll turn it back over to Dan.
All right. So we're very excited to get to this point where we have a pretty complete draft. It's out for public review. At this point, we're not anticipating major changes, but there's still an opportunity for input and incorporation into that plan. But we're trying to wrap this up by the end of the calendar year is the goal. So the plan's out there on the website at lanecounty.org/parksplan. So we'd love for if you would take a look at that and give us any sort of feedback, positive or negative. There's a short survey on there, a link, so we'd love for you to take that too and give us some feedback. So we're asking for feedback by the end of next month, and then we'll start working our way through the approval process. We'll bring it to the Parks Advisory Committee, all that feedback, get their input as we're taking the public review draft to a final draft and incorporating those different comments and talking about how we've addressed concerns. September 24th, we'll take that to our task force. Hopefully that will be the last task force meeting. This group of 23 has been very gracious, extending this project a year longer than we told them, but want to bring that back to them for their recommendation, to bring that to the Board of County Commissioners, and hoping to bring a final draft to the commissioners late September, early October. After we get the board's comments, we'll incorporate those, and then bring it to the Parks Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission, hopefully at one time, to get their approval to bring it back to the board. And then we'll come back to the board a second time to finalize the document, get their adoption, and adopt that into what's called the Rural Comprehensive Plan. The former plan, almost 40 years ago, was part of the Rural Comprehensive Plan. And it makes it, so it kind of elevates the stature of that document as something that the county will move forward with, and brings it out of sort of more out of an administrative document, but something that's really formally recognized by the board. So that's the process, and we're going to try to stick to that timeline and get this through. So I just want to thank, we have some folks here from our Parks Advisory Committee and Task Force that have put hours and hours and hours of effort into reviewing documents, providing suggestions and working through this process. Again, thank you for your time coming out here tonight. I think I have one more. Oh, well, no, I've got a few more slides, sorry. So, this is a great plan, but then how do we implement it? We have limited resources. There's a lot in there where it's going to take many years, and it's going to take some time to build momentum about the implementation part of it. What we need to do next is, after adoption, is to figure out how we're going to prioritize the work. We can't do everything at once, and we need to find out how we can get the most bang for our buck and get some action going. So there are some tools in the action plan that were developed by our professional consultants to be able to work through a questionnaire to evaluate the strategies to find out what we should be doing at this point in time. There's also some worksheets for evaluating community proposals. recognizing that the community may have some specific ideas at specific parks that they want to move forward, and going through a formalized process to make sure that the proposals and our action on those fit with the plan and fit with what we can resource and sustain. Capital projects prioritization, there's also some recommendations in the plan for how we would capitalize those or how we would prioritize those investments. And we've actually done a lot of work on that already. It was one of those internship projects that I talked about. There was an intern that developed this great matrix, this spreadsheet with all these different categories for criteria that we should look for in a project, such as safety and impact and cost, and weight those to figure out what we should be doing at this point in time, what is the most important project. And then the last piece is to develop action plans. So instead of just relying on this one big sort of generic plan, is to develop these 2 to 3 year action plans of what are we going to do in the shorter time frame. So that will be future work after we adopt the final plan. So in closing, this master plan provides the guidance and tools to usher in a new age for Lane County parks. Working together, county staff, partners, stakeholders, other agencies, and cities and volunteers can maximize the benefits of Lane County parks from sea to summit and preserve those resources for future generations. We're very lucky here, all of us, to live in Lane County and have these tremendous resources in our parks and the beautiful landscape. From sea to summit, we really have that. You're getting up into the summit here, but we'll have some meetings on the coast at our sea areas. And we just want to make sure that we have all those parks functioning as best we can for our time and for the future. So that wraps up our presentation. Just again, thank you for coming out tonight, spending your time with us. We'd love to hear any feedback you have now, and again, I invite you to take a look at the plan in more detail and give us your more detailed comments. So, do you have any questions for us at this time?
Yeah, I think at the prior meetings, 2 of the sites that generated a lot of public comment were Eagle Rock and Hendricks Bridge.
Okay.
Could you talk a little bit about how it's changed from what was in the draft?
And so I'm a late arrival. I should have said
Yeah.
that at the beginning. I started in this job only officially a couple months ago, but I've been with the county for 12 years and have monitored this project for a while. One of my staff was working on the previous draft several years ago. I didn't ever come to any of those public meetings before, so I'm not sure what those particular concerns were. I don't know, Charlie, if you can speak to that.
I can speak to that a little bit. Again, that happened prior to my tenure as well here. But specifically with Hendricks Bridge, the way that project is evolving and the way it's going, it's continuing on. We've gone through the process. We're working on the mitigation process. So if you're not familiar with the Hendricks Bridge project, there are a couple phases. One of them is adding in a bathroom. That's been done. That was done a few years ago. The next phase is to realign the boat ramp. Right now it's basically pointing perpendicular out into the river, and we're going to realign that so it's going to be almost parallel. It's going to be at a very shallow angle to that to the river. That process is going. We're working with federal agencies to get a federal permit on our mitigation. The state approved our mitigation plans for our disturbance that we're going to have in the water and along the riverbank. And so that project is progressing. We're on track that we would probably begin construction sometime in early 2020 on that to get that going. The construction project for that would still require a grant. So once we get all of our permits and everything aligned and approved, then we can go out and we can start looking at a construction firm and start looking at grant money to see actually what is the final bill going to be for that. And regarding Eagle Rock, the plan for that, there was a campground, there was a bunch of other different things to develop that. That's not in this plan at all. That's really not a project that we are discussing and talking about. As we talked about with our limited resources, both funding and staff, our vision and the way that we're going about and approaching this, our vision is any camping, any campgrounds that we go and we work with, we're going to work with our developed campgrounds. And right now the campground at Armitage, we're looking at doubling that. It's a developed campground, it's got a high usage, it meets a need for the community, and that's where we're going to focus our resources and energy. And that's going to be a fairly expensive project, and that's really going to consume us for about 5 to 7 years to get that project to come to fruition. We have no staff time, we don't have no funding available to even look at Eagle Rock or following through with any of that. And prior to even doing anything like that, again, we would come out to the community. It would be something we would discuss. We would go through, as Dan talked about, the implementation part. Does it meet the goals of this plan? Does it meet the economic vitality? Does it meet, the the historic and cultural area? Does it do what we want it to do? And right now, it doesn't. It's not on our radar to do anything along those lines. So we're focusing our efforts and our resources elsewhere. The efforts and the resources that we're focusing up here are again for the old McKinsey Fish Hatchery. It's for ensuring that the boat ramps are maintained, that they're operated, that they're clean, the infrastructure is there, and again, working with the community. I mean, there are a lot of active people up here, a lot of active organizations that we want to work with for the boat ramps, and that's what we're going to focus our energy on, is the volunteer and the community efforts